In a bustling suburban community, a wedding was taking place. On a day meant for love and celebration, a bride's shocking revelations turned the event into a chilling tale of betrayal and horror. The church was draped in soft white, the air thick with the promise of devotion, but Lily Anderson's heart raced beneath her gown, each beat a reminder of the secret she carried. As she stood behind the grand oak doors, her breath shallow, she knew today was no longer about love or joy. It was a day that would forever stain Jake Marshall's memory, a reckoning he never saw coming. Her hands gripped the bouquet tightly, her mind drifting back to the moment she uncovered Jake's affair with Sarah Collins, her closest friend and bridesmaid. The betrayal had cut deep, but Lily hadn't confronted him. Instead, she had watched in silence, each lie and fake smile further fueling her resolve. The man waiting at the altar thought he had outsmarted her, but the truth was a heavy blade poised to strike. Lily Anderson had always been the embodiment of grace and resilience, qualities as much a part of her as the air she breathed. Born and raised in a small, close-knit town, Lily was the kind of woman people gravitated toward, effortlessly kind, fiercely loyal, and with a quiet strength that seemed to anchor those around her. Her parents, owners of a modest flower shop, had instilled in her the values of hard work, integrity, and devotion. These qualities became central to who Lily was and shaped her approach to every aspect of her life, particularly her relationships. Lily's upbringing was simple but filled with love. She grew up watching her parents work side by side, supporting one another through life's inevitable ups and downs. Their marriage, though not without its challenges, was built on a foundation of trust, mutual respect, and unwavering honesty. To Lily, that was what true love looked like. Two people who could face the world together, hand in hand, with no secrets between them. It was this idealized vision of love that Lily carried with her into adulthood. And it was this vision she believed she had found when she met Jake Marshall. Jake, on the other hand, came from a vastly different world. Raised in a wealthy family, Jake grew up in the city, where appearances mattered more than the truth, and charm could get you almost anything. His parents were socialites, often more focused on their status in the community than on their relationship with their only son. Jake learned early on that power and influence could cover up a multitude of sins. He became adept at managing perceptions, knowing just how to present himself to others to get what he wanted. He was charismatic, confident, and always knew the right thing to say. It was a skill that had served him well throughout his life, especially when it came to relationships. When Jake and Lily first met, their worlds seemed to collide in the most unexpected way. Jake had been visiting her small town for a business conference, and by chance, or what Lily had thought of as fate, they crossed paths at her parents' flower shop. Jake had been charming from the start, effortlessly engaging in conversation as he admired the arrangements and asked about the shop's history. Lily, though initially cautious, found herself drawn to him. He was different from anyone she had ever met. Worldly, successful, and confident in a way that made her feel like the only woman in the room. For Jake, Lily represented something pure, something he had never experienced in the whirlwind of his city life. She was genuine, sincere, and completely unaware of the power her quiet beauty held. Jake was used to women who sought his attention because of his success or the doors he could open for them, but Lily wanted nothing from him. She was simply kind, and that disarmed him. What started as a brief flirtation quickly blossomed into a full-blown romance. Jake swept Lily off her feet in the months that followed. He would drive down from the city every weekend to see her, bringing lavish gifts and taking her on extravagant dates. Lily, unused to such grand gestures, found herself falling deeper and deeper in love. For her, Jake was everything she had ever dreamed of: charming, successful, and seemingly devoted. He spoke about their future with certainty, about how he could see himself leaving the fast-paced city life behind for something quieter, something more like what Lily had always known. He promised her stability, love, and loyalty, all the things she valued most. Their engagement came after a few months of dating during a weekend trip to the coast. Jake had planned the entire proposal down to the smallest detail: a private dinner on the beach, a diamond ring that sparkled as brightly as Lily's eyes, and a heartfelt speech about how he couldn't imagine his life without her. Lily had said yes without hesitation, her heart full of joy and excitement for the future they would build together. But as the wedding planning began, cracks in their seemingly perfect relationship started to appear. Jake's business trips became more frequent, and Lily often found herself alone, poring over wedding details while he was away. She chalked it up to the demands of his career, convincing herself that everything would settle down once they were married. She trusted him completely. After all, Jake had given her no reason to doubt his love, at least not until she found the texts. It had been a random evening when Lily's world began to unravel. Jake had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he took a call in another room, and a message popped up from Sarah Collins, one of Lily's closest friends and bridesmaids. At first, Lily thought nothing of it. Sarah and Jake were friendly, after all, but the nature of the message was unmistakable. It was flirtatious, intimate, and clearly not the kind of conversation that should be happening between her fiancé and her best friend. Lily felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. Her initial disbelief gave way to anger, but that anger quickly turned to sorrow as she scrolled through weeks of texts, piecing together the truth. Jake and Sarah had been having an affair for months, right under her nose. The late nights, the business trips, it had all been a cover for their betrayal. Lily had been living in a carefully constructed lie, and now the truth was staring her in the face. For weeks, Lily grappled with what to do. She considered confronting Jake immediately, ending the engagement and walking away, but something held her back. She had spent her life believing in the power of truth, in the idea that honesty could heal even the deepest wounds. But this felt beyond repair. Instead of lashing out, Lily chose a different path. She would wait. She would let Jake believe his secret was safe, and then, on the day they were meant to pledge their lives to one another, she would expose him. She wanted him to feel the same betrayal she had felt, the same gut-wrenching realization that everything he thought he knew was a lie. As the wedding day drew closer, Lily Anderson's heart grew heavier with the weight of betrayal. Each passing day was a reminder of Jake Marshall's deceit, the lies he wove effortlessly into their life together. He had no idea she knew about his affair with Sarah Collins. While Sarah smiled sweetly and helped with wedding preparations, Lily could hardly look at her without feeling the sting of their shared treachery. Jake played his role as the devoted fiancé to perfection. He spoke of their future with warmth and excitement, never letting on that he was hiding something so dark. But Lily had seen it all. The texts, the secret glances between Jake and Sarah, the late-night meetings disguised as work commitments. She watched as Jake continued to manipulate everyone around him, thinking he could keep his double life intact. But Lily had other plans. In the days leading up to the ceremony, she meticulously prepared for the moment of revelation. It would be public and brutal, a humiliation he would never forget. She imagined the shock in his eyes, the gasps from the crowd, and the shame that would envelop Sarah. The closer the day came, the more resolved Lily became. Jake thought he had outsmarted her, but soon he would realize the true cost of his lies. On the day of the wedding, Lily Anderson stood in front of the mirror, her eyes tracing the intricate lace of her veil as she adjusted it delicately atop her head. The woman staring back at her was every bit the perfect bride, radiant, poised, and glowing with a smile that concealed the storm raging inside her. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, a celebration of her love and future with Jake Marshall. But Lily's heart was far from joyful. Beneath the layers of silk and satin, simmering resentment brewed. The venue was breathtaking, transformed into a floral wonderland that smelled of fresh blooms and love. Delicate white roses adorned every corner, cascading from the altar and framing the soft glow of candles flickering in the twilight. Friends and family filled the seats, their smiles beaming with anticipation for a celebration that would mark the beginning of a beautiful journey. Yet, for Lily Anderson, the scene was both enchanting and suffocating. As she stepped onto the aisle, the soft rustle of her gown and the muted click of her heels echoed in her ears. With every step, excitement mingled with dread, her heart a relentless drumbeat in her chest. She could see Jake Marshall standing at the altar, handsome and confident in his tailored suit, completely oblivious to the storm brewing within her. To him, this day was the culmination of their love story. To Lily, it was the stage for his reckoning. Jake's eyes sparkled with devotion as he caught sight of her, his lips curling into a smile meant to reassure. It was a look she had cherished, once believing it to be genuine. Now it felt like a mask, a deceptive facade hiding the truth of his betrayal. As she approached, Lily focused on the petals strewn along the aisle, each one a reminder of the beauty that masked the darkness lying beneath their relationship. The ceremony began with traditional readings, the officiant's voice a comforting hum that felt like a distant echo. Lily's thoughts drifted as she exchanged fleeting glances with her guests, their expressions full of love and hope. But her gaze inevitably returned to Jake, who remained blissfully unaware of her inner turmoil. He held her hands, warm and familiar, yet Lily felt a coldness creeping in as the weight of her plans settled over her like a shroud. When it was time to exchange vows, the world around them blurred. Lily could hear her own heartbeat as she recited the carefully chosen words, each syllable laced with irony. She had rehearsed this moment countless times, knowing the significance behind every phrase. For better or worse, she said, the words hanging in the air, and she couldn't help but think of how much worse it truly was. With each vow she spoke, she felt the urge to reveal everything building inside her. As they stood face to face, she could see the light in Jake's eyes, the sincerity he exuded as he pledged his love and loyalty. The moment approached, an electric current crackling between them, urging her to unleash the truth. She could feel the words rising in her throat, the urge to shatter the illusion overwhelming. But she held back, biding her time. With their friends and family gathered, she would wait for the perfect moment. The crowd's hushed anticipation fueled her resolve. They would witness the revelation together, and Jake would have nowhere to hide. As Jake turned to reach for the ring, a glimmer of unease flickered across his face, though he quickly masked it with a smile. Lily took a deep breath, steadying herself. The moment was almost here, the climax of her carefully laid plan. Her heart raced, and with each passing second, the mix of excitement and dread grew stronger. This day, meant to symbolize love and commitment, would become a moment etched in everyone's memory. Just as they were about to exchange rings, an electric tension filled the air. Lily Anderson took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had. With a steadiness that surprised even herself, she turned to face the sea of familiar faces gathered in celebration. This was the moment she had planned for so long, and it was finally here. Her heart raced, but she kept her voice strong as she began to speak. "Before we continue," she said, knowing that her words would shatter the carefully constructed facade they had all believed in. The crowd, once filled with joy and anticipation, fell into a heavy silence, every gaze locked onto her. Jake stood beside her, handsome and oblivious, a smile still lingering on his lips. But as she pointed directly at him, declaring that he had been unfaithful, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Gasps rippled through the audience like a shockwave, a collective intake of breath as the truth sank in. The disbelief on their faces mirrored the turmoil in Lily's heart. Jake's expression morphed from shock to denial in an instant. He pleaded with her to stop, his voice rising in panic, but it was too late. The revelation was out, and there was no taking it back. Lily could see the color draining from his face as the weight of her words pressed down on him. All the lies he had told, the manipulations he had spun, every detail now hung in the air. The guests shifted in their seats, a mix of shock and sympathy washing over them. Friends exchanged bewildered glances, while family members clutched each other in disbelief. For Lily, it felt surreal, as if she were watching a scene unfold from outside her own body. The moment she had anticipated for so long was finally here, but the emotions coursing through her were a chaotic blend of anger, sadness, and vindication. Jake stammered, his eyes darting around the room, searching for an escape from the situation he had created. He was exposed, and there was nowhere to hide. Lily felt a flicker of satisfaction as she watched the realization dawn on him. The perfect groom had become the embodiment of betrayal, and she had orchestrated his downfall. As the silence deepened, Lily prepared herself for the fallout. This was only the beginning of the chaos that would ensue. She was ready to face the storm she had unleashed, determined to stand her ground in a moment that would redefine her life forever. Jake's expression shifted to fury, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and desperation. He took a step forward, trying to regain control over the situation that was spiraling out of his grasp. Panic filled the room as guests shifted in their seats, some whispering in disbelief while others looked on with expressions of pity for Lily. The bridesmaids, once glowing with excitement, stood frozen in shock, their smiles replaced by wide-eyed horror. Sarah, the supposed supportive friend, turned pale, her eyes darting between Jake and Lily. She had thought she could remain hidden in the shadows of their deception, but now she was thrust into the harsh light of scrutiny. The confrontation escalated quickly, tension filling the air as Jake's frustration reached its peak. His emotions, a volatile mix of anger and fear, got the better of him. He took a step toward Lily, his face contorted with desperation, trying to regain control of a situation spiraling out of his hands. In his frantic attempt to stop her from saying more, Jake reached out, but his actions were clumsy and thoughtless. He grabbed at her arm too forcefully, causing Lily to lose her balance. She stumbled, the room spinning as the weight of the moment overwhelmed her. In the confusion, she tripped backward, her foot catching on the edge of her dress. Everything happened in slow motion as Lily collided with the decorative table behind her. Her fall seemed gentle at first, but then the sharp edge of the table caught her, and she hit the ground. The room fell into a stunned silence as the guests gasped, watching the scene unfold before them. Jake's heart raced with panic, realizing too late the gravity of what had happened. He knelt beside Lily, calling her name, but she lay motionless. The vibrant joy that had filled the wedding venue just moments before had evaporated, replaced by shock and fear. Guests rushed to call for help as whispers of concern spread through the crowd. What had begun as a day of celebration had transformed into a moment of tragedy. The weight of betrayal and unspoken truths now hung heavy over them all, with Jake left to grapple with the consequences of his actions. The soft melodies that once filled the hall were replaced by the harsh sounds of emergency responders. The once beautiful venue was now a scene of devastation. Jake watched in helpless silence as they placed Lily on a stretcher, his heart sinking deeper with each passing moment. The questions from onlookers were endless, but Jake had no answers. All he could think about was the last few minutes, the heated argument, the confrontation, and how everything had spiraled out of control. What was meant to be a celebration of love had turned into a nightmare of guilt and loss. As the ambulance doors closed, taking Lily away, the reality of the situation fully settled in. The life they had planned was shattered, and nothing would ever be the same again. In the days following Lily's tragic death, the weight of what had happened settled heavily on Jake. The shock had worn off, replaced by an unbearable guilt and a haunting emptiness. The vibrant woman he had once planned to marry was gone, her life taken in a moment of recklessness. He could still hear the whispers of disbelief from the guests, and could still feel the cold stares as they pieced together the events of that fateful day. The police had begun their investigation almost immediately. With so many witnesses present at the wedding, there was no avoiding the inevitable scrutiny. Statements were gathered, each recounting the confrontation at the altar and how Jake had shoved Lily in the heat of the moment. Though the push had not been meant to cause harm, it had set off a chain of events that led to her fall and her death. A few days later, the knock at Jake's door came. It was early morning, the sun barely breaking over the horizon, when the officers arrived to take him into custody. Jake didn't resist. There was no point. His thoughts had been consumed with regret since the moment it happened, and he knew he would have to face the consequences of his actions. As he sat in the back of the police car, the reality of his situation started to sink in. Lily was gone, and there was no undoing what had been done. His life, once filled with the promise of a future together, was now reduced to a series of cold, hard facts. Lily was dead, and Jake was responsible. Charged with involuntary manslaughter, Jake found himself thrust into the criminal justice system, a world he never imagined entering. His lawyer explained the gravity of the charge, how his actions, though not premeditated, had still resulted in the loss of a life. The legal proceedings were swift, with the media turning Lily's tragic death into headline news. In the courtroom, surrounded by lawyers and reporters, Jake felt the weight of every decision he had made. The lies, the affair, the anger. As the evidence was laid out, the image of Lily lying still and broken at their wedding haunted him. Jake's mind was trapped in that moment. knowing that no sentence, no amount of remorse could ever bring her back. The day of celebration had become a day of reckoning, and Jake's punishment was only beginning.